Welcome, former Deputy National Security Advisor to the President, K.T. McFarland. From Florida, former Attorney General, Pam Bondi. Actress, Savannah Chrisley. And your host, Executive Director of Right on Crime, Brett Tolman.
Folks, when I was asked to be United States Attorney by President Bush, so long ago, I didn't have gray in my beard. But I remember two things. I was told very distinctly by the outgoing U.S. Attorney. He said, there is a plaque in the halls of justice that say very clearly, and I remember reading this, that the hallmark of fairness in the administration of justice is consistency. And the second thing he told me was never, ever, ever relinquish any power to Washington, D.C. Those were the two things I was told. And what I have seen, and you all have heard me and Pam and Katie and Savannah, my new friend here, talk about the justice system, the two-tier justice system, but I never thought that my justice system, led by an individual named Merrick Garland, being controlled by an executive named Joe Biden, would use all that enormous power to target their adversaries, their enemies, their opponents, or anyone they really didn't like. So we want to expose this, talk about it, and then discuss how do we fix this. So Katie, I'll turn to you. Tell us, you've been in the White House, what's going on in our country with the Department of Justice and our justice system?
Well, it starts with the FBI. I was in the Trump administration on the transition, and as Deputy National Security Advisor, moved with President Trump into the West Wing of the White House. Worked there, setting up fantastic foreign policies that were, peace in the world, prosperity in America, everything was terrific. And then President Trump appointed me, nominated me to be ambassador to Singapore. So I left my White House job, went home, started reading all about Singapore, tried to brush up on my Chinese that I learned in college. And all of a sudden, I get a phone call. So we live in Long Island, lousy cell phone service, and I get a phone call, my cell phone, and it's sort of scratchy sounding, and I hear FBI here. I didn't know what that meant. And I said, I'm sorry, can you call me back on my landline, or can I call you back? No, that's all right. We're right here. So tap, 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 knock on my door. I just gotten back from the gym, all right? I'm in my exercise clothes. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning. My husband had just left to go to the village to go run errands. Our kids are all grown, so it was just me alone. Tap, tap, tap on the door, and I open the door, and I see two big guys, and they say, hi, we're from the FBI. Flash their credentials, and they say, we just want to have a few words with you. And I said, oh, and I figured what it was FBI guys doing security clearances on people who had been on my staff, security renewals. And I said, sure, come on in. And I said, well, so what are you here for? And they said, well, we're part of the Mueller investigation. I said, okay, but, I wasn't Russia policy. I was the China person. I was the Europe person. I wasn't the Russia person. And they said, that's all right. We just want to ask you a few general questions. Do you mind if we ask you a few general questions? And I said, well, look, I'm a Girl Scout. I turned in all of my files and my documents and my schedules and my devices when I left the White House. And I'm just operating on memory. I'll happily tell you what I remember, but don't take it as gospel because it might be wrong. It might be inaccurate. Oh, don't worry about a thing. So we sit down at my dining room table, me still in my exercise clothes, and they start pulling out newspaper articles and start asking questions about this thing or that thing that happened during the transition. And what they said was that they wanted to find out the level of Russian interference in the Trump administration or in U.S. government. And I said, hey, look, I want to find out the level of Russian interference, too. I don't like the Russians. I want to find out what they did. I want to find out how we stop them from doing it again. So I'm, at this point, a really cooperative witness. And I said, you're not here to investigate me, are you? Oh, no. We just want to, set the stage. So about 6 hours later, anyway, in the intermediate time, my husband comes home, and I pull him aside, and I said, Alan, I think these guys are, do you think they're investigating me for something? And he said, I don't know. Let me call the Attorney General. So Alan called one of his best friends from law school, a former Attorney General Mike Mukasey, and said, here's a story. There are 2 FBI guys here from the Mueller investigation. They want to interview KT about her time in the Trump administration. And the Attorney General said, oh, don't worry about it. It's probably just fine. They're just looking for some background information. I wouldn't worry about it. You probably don't need a lawyer or anything. So me, cooperate, tell them everything I think I know. And then they leave, and I said, okay, is this it? And they said, probably, but maybe not. And they said, well, we may get in touch with you again. Well, sure enough, they got in touch with me again, and this time it was not so nice with the conversations. And then they wanted to get in touch with me again. Well, by this time, I got a really mean, tough lawyer. And what was pretty clear is that although I'd had nothing to do with Russia, although I knew President Trump hadn't colluded with the Russians, they didn't really care. Their job was not to charge me with a crime. They didn't think I'd committed a crime. Their job was to try to blackmail me into committing perjury or charging me with perjury, getting me to plead guilty to perjury, and probably implicating President Trump.
Well, and Katie, they have a policy. They won't record because they want to be able
They
to
don't record because then they're going to say what to do.
They're going to write down the notes, and then they're going to say, you know what you said disagrees with what my notes are, and then we're going to bring charges. And that's a prosecution that we see all the time now. So is it just the feds, Pam, or are state prosecutors abusing any authority?
Well, I don't know. Have you guys heard of Fannie Willis? Oh, yes. But, what goes around comes around. And,
right.
Brett, I don't know if you all saw the breaking news today. This might shock you, but they just got her cell phone records, and it disputes her timeline of her affair with Nathan Wade. Yeah. All right. It was 12,000 text messages in an 11-month period.
It's about work, Pam. That's all about work.
And he's never tried a felony case in his whole career.
And so, I was a former state prosecutor and a state AG, so we'll talk about Letitia James in a second, another one of my favorites. But Fannie Willis, it's going to catch up with these people. And this is such an organized effort. I've never seen such a well-organized, diabolical plan to get Trump than this. Because they're working at the federal level, the FBI. How we get rid of them is vote Donald Trump back in office. But on a state level, and I've said this for years, that's why it's so important to elect. You've got to look at your local DAs, state attorneys, solicitors, they're called in some states. You've got to be active in those local races. And that's why, because the Fannie Willises of the world are going to go after him. That case is going to disintegrate. It's gone. Because she lied, he lied, Nathan Wade.
And let's just call it for what it is. Conservatives have dropped the ball in not holding the criminal justice system accountable.
Yeah.
We've given them power and not reined it in.
Yes.
From immunity to everything else. So what about Letitia?
And they don't even care. Look at Letitia James. We were all tweeting this out. Eric Trump and I went. She was campaigning on the fact that she was going to get Donald Trump before she saw one single business record from New York. Not one. She was campaigning, I'm going to make it my life's mission to get Donald Trump, and she did. And that's going to backfire, too. It's going to be reversed on appeal. We all know it's going to be reversed on appeal. Anybody think Mar-a-Lago is valued at $18 million? It's absurd what she did. The president did nothing wrong. I was a state AG. He did nothing wrong. His CPAs valued that property.
But here's the thing.
Were very happy. They could have.
The whole thing is the money.
The banks were repaid.
Always follow the money. What they know, Donald Trump didn't do any of this stuff. They don't care. What they want to do is have these huge judgments against him, so they take the wealthiest man in America and bankrupt him.
Well, here's when the government will acknowledge that it's worth a lot. If they seize it, all of a sudden that's going to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, and Fannie Willis is going to stay there, for a weekend or two.
But it's going to be reversed. It will be reversed. I mean, the judge was horrible. The clerk, we all know, was horrible. The AG is awful. I think it's criminal what they did, but it's going to be reversed. But the problem is they just want to get him before November. They want him to be in a courtroom or in jail. And
preoccupied, having to turn over hundreds of thousands of dollars to lawyers to defend himself for crimes he didn't commit.
And what
It makes him stronger. Every time they go after him,
it does make him stronger
because of all of you supporting him.
And let's also point out, we heard all about from the left that the criminal justice system needed to be reined in and that there were problems and we needed to rein in prosecutors, but crickets when it comes to abuses against anyone on the right, including Trump. Where are all those advocates for criminal justice reform when it comes to prosecutions against the right? So I prosecuted a lot of individuals. The last case I prosecuted was the kidnapper of Elizabeth Smart. Very proud of a lot of the work that I did. I tried to make good decisions. But Savannah has another impression of the justice system. Are there things that need to be fixed?
Oh, without a doubt. For people that aren't aware of my story, both my parents are serving a combined 19 years in federal prison. Their case was in Fulton County, Georgia, and the prosecutor started off our trial by stating, "Ladies and gentlemen, what we have here are the Trumps of the South." And in Fulton County, Georgia, we all know how well that went over, especially with the judge, and she was the youngest African-American woman appointed by Obama. And from the date of trial to the end, we knew we were doomed. They never one time showed a single bank loan for bank fraud. Instead, they showed a spreadsheet that the FBI made. And when the FBI was asked what steps they took to authenticate evidence, the FBI agent stated, "Well, what are you asking me?" "Well, we're asking you, what steps did you take? You have Quantico at your fingertips." And he said, we didn't. So never one time did you authenticate evidence, never. And now the main prosecutor on the case has left the U.S. Attorney's Office and is now at the FDIC after we allege major misconduct, huge Fourth Amendment violations. And at this point, the FBI having a 98% conviction rate, that is not a win. The government is taking our taxpayer dollars and coming after us. And you are one bad prosecutor, one bad judge away from being in the same position my family's in.
One of the things Savannah raised, which is very important, is we have expanded immunity, right?
Since 1976.
So you cannot get immunity, apparently, if you're a sitting president that gets charged after they're out of office. But you try to go after a prosecutor or after certain individuals in the Justice Department, and the immunity is so strong, you can't do it. So where's accountability?
And that's the thing, is where's the accountability? Also, in our case, the IRS, which we're all huge fans of here, an IRS agent testified, and after trial, she stated, "What I said actually wasn't true. They don't owe anything." And that is all in internal documents that we now have. And when we called the government out on that, on our reply briefs, they responded, "It was a harmless error." A harmless error. You use tax fraud in order to build a bank fraud case, and it's a harmless error? I don't believe that. Instead, taxpayer dollars are going to hire more IRS agents.
Think about this case that I had. It actually got uncovered that the prosecutor and the FBI were reading the defense team's emails between the defendant and the lawyer. And they got caught. And they brought him in front of the judge, and the judge said, "You know, if this were a civil case, I'd fine you so much money that it made your head spin. But I can't find any relief in the criminal code to hold you accountable." So we have a lot of work. Weaponization is real. If you're in power and you're willing to use the power of the prosecution to go after your political adversaries, how do we fix it, KT?
Well, we better
Savannah?
fix it soon, because my concern is, having seen what happened with the Trump administration and how every conservative was sort of fair game, right? They were just target practice for the FBI and the Justice Department, that in a second Trump administration, everybody's going to have to lawyer up from day one, because they'll come after you for overdue library books. They're going to look for every excuse they can get to prosecute people, to go after them, to harass them, to subpoena them. And at the end of the day, they know they have infinite resources. They can come after you forever. But you are paying for your own defense. So you got to mortgage your house. There goes your insurance, there goes your retirement plan. And you don't get reimbursed by your insurance, by the Justice Department. They just come after you. So I think that we better figure out how to fix it, because if the Trump administration comes back in, it's not just Donald Trump they're going to go after. they're going to go after every member of his administration for something. And every one of the government agencies, which is populated by 97%, the swamp is 97% Democrats, the media is 100% Democrats. They're all going to come after any Trump appointees, guns blazing. And so I don't know how the fix is. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a victim of all of this. But man, I don't want to see any more victims.
You're exactly right. And Pam, you'll appreciate my mother, who passed this last year, 83 years old, used to call me and say, if I could just punch Joe Biden, I would do it. And I would say, Mom, I don't think you can actually make that threat. And she would say, well, you better fix this. And she put a lot of pressure. But I know Pam and myself, Katie, Savannah, others, I know Pam and I for sure are not going to rest until we have made a difference in the criminal justice system.
Without a doubt.
Right.
I believe that every sector of the government needs to be completely deconstructed and then built back. And it needs to be built back on right. It needs to be built back right on faith, on ethics, and just doing the right thing. Because I tell people all the time, if you want to convict my parents, convict them, but convict them on the truth. And the government can't do that. The fact that we had 74,000 felony cases last year in 2022, and only 1,000 of them went to trial. Only 1,000. Why is that? Because our government scares people into pleading out. They scare them into doing what we want you to do. The only reason they went after my mother is because my father wouldn't plead guilty. It's what they do best.
You know, there was a point when they were going after me where they basically said, plead guilty to perjury. We know you didn't do it. Plead guilty to perjury, or tell us about Donald Trump and the collusion he was doing with the Russians. And I went back to my husband. My lawyer gave me the deal. And I went back to my husband and said, God, should I just lie and plead guilty to something? Maybe they'll go away. Otherwise, the rest of my life, I'm going to be hounded by these people. And he said, no, you'll never live with yourself. Don't do it. And so we went back to the FBI and the Mueller people and said, no, you're going to come after us. Just come after us. We're not going to lie. And they went away. But at the end of the day, what they wanted was Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. I was collateral damage in this. But they thought they could flip me. They thought I would lie and then somehow finger Donald Trump, and then he'd be in trouble.
They underestimated our brilliant friend right here.
Tough.
So Pam, what are our next steps?
Well, first put Donald Trump back in office, and he's going to clean up DOJ. He's going to clean up the FBI. It has to be done. And you know, Brett, as former prosecutors, we know that the men and women, the rank men and women of the FBI, they want to be out getting missing children. They want to be solving bank robberies. They want to be going after human traffickers. The same thing with the cops, with the sheriffs, with the police.
That's right.
Their hands are tied. Look at Letitia James in New York. Crime is at an all-time high. A lot of it because of this horrible immigration policy. Yes. Crime is at an all-time high, and their hands are tied. They can't do anything. They're getting beaten on the streets of New York. Yes. Beaten, and no one's doing anything about it. And that's why we've got to elect better state officials, but we also have to support our good men and women in law enforcement.
Amen. I will say, amen. If you want to know a takeaway for this meeting, educate yourself on the abuses of power that are going on in this country and the criminal justice system, and then elect individuals that are faithful, are moral, do have a conscience, do want the rule of law in our country. If you don't, you get either the woke left prosecutor that refuses to prosecute certain types of crimes and prosecutes certain crimes based on a political ideology. You also avoid individuals that you look at and say, okay, they're prosecuting that person because it's a political opponent. I remember hearing from Mukasey, and I remember Ed Meese. These were attorney generals who said, we don't care about a person's politics. We want to know the facts, and we want to know if the law is applied correctly.
So what are they doing today? They're flipping it around to do what what Stalin's henchmen did, where show me the man, I'll find you the crime.
That's right.
Exactly.
Just last thought. When Reagan was president, there were roughly 4,000 to 5,000 criminal federal statutes. There are now over 300,000 criminal statutes and regulations with criminal penalties. Do you think they have power to come after anyone if they wanted to?
Yeah.
They do. Let's fix it.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great job, Savannah.
Ladies and gentlemen, make sure to visit the